Chapter 7. Battle on High. There were another couple of horn cries over the next several hours. For some, they could hear return peals. Zipper and Delta staged what they could atop the windmill. There was a collection of sturdy furniture, bags of flour, and whatever basins and buckets they could find, filled with water. It had been tiring work, and they each caught snatches of rest in turn. Around midnight, there were loud cries carried to them by the wind from the forest. Half of the pickets had withdrawn, and there was a lot of movement in the forest eaves. "Sounds like they're already celebrating," said Zipper glumly. "If I had a keg of brandy, I'd roll it out for them. Overconfident troops make mistakes," said Delta. Zipper looked at the stars. "It's still a long time till sunrise. I guess we'll just have to bloody a few noses," said Delta. The ruckus raised in pitch. They could hear the distant clash of spears on shield. "Burn that energy," said Delta. "Come to us drunk and tired." "Does seem kind of wasteful," said Zipper. She looked around suspiciously. Weren't there 4 pickets left? Delta's head whipped around. The wolf and rider furthest from the front were missing. "You have any schooling?" asked Delta, moving from side to side. The large dome housing the main gears for the windmill was in the center of the platform, obscuring the view of the far side. "Some," said Zipper, confused. "Stand near the edge there and recite something." She took her glaive by near the head and crept quietly to one side. "1 and 1 are 2?" said Zipper hesitantly. Then, 2 and 2 are 4. More conversationally, 4 and 4 are 8. She said it was like the biggest joke ever. Delta had decided if she was going to sneak up on someone at the top, she would come up on the opposite side from the forest, then creep around to where the transverse axle connected to the blades, since there was the most cover from there. So she crept around the far side and hugged the curve closely. It was always better to assume your enemy was smarter than you. It was just less embarrassing in the end. And then she saw it. A hooded head was just raising itself over the edge. Not seeing anything immediate, the 2 clawed hands reached up further, up and pulled it halfway over the edge. Delta kept as still as she could, but the goblin only spared a glance to that side of the dome. It was fixed mostly on the main axle, and the wheeled support that cradled it and allowed it to pivot around the platform. It pulled itself the rest of the way onto the platform and began to slink in that direction. Delta had never seen a goblin before, and she wasn't quite sure that this counted as seeing one now. It wore a hood, which came down over its shoulders. Its clothes were dark and tight, covering a small frame, about the size of a dwarf, but much slighter. She gave it time to progress to its target, creeping around her side just enough to keep it in sight. She wanted to give it just enough time. There it was. The goblin had stiffened and strained forward. It had just noticed Zipper was alone. It whipped around just as Delta was closing the distance on it. "Surprise!" shouted Delta as she lunged at it with her glaive. The goblin leaped to the side and eeled under the axle, pulling it between them. Delta struck several times over and under the bar, keeping the goblin entangled and dodging her. Until thunk, Zipper's spear caught it flat on the back. "Surprise, surprise!" chortled Zipper. The goblin fell to the ground, breath knocked out of it. The 2 mercenaries held their polearms ready, waiting for its next move. They saw the goblin's breathing start up again, and looked desperately from one to the other. It then sprang out of its curled-up position, not at either of them, but along the shaft. It leapt from the edge, trying for one of the windmill sails. Delta was quicker and slashed the goblin in mid-leap, knocking it off its trajectory. It hit the sail hard and failed to get a grip, wailing in a high-pitched shriek as it slid down the slats. It fell then, bounced against the side of the windmill, and landed in a solid thump on the ground. 2 down, said Zipper. 30 more to go, said Delta. The ruckus in the forest had quieted with a shriek. It turned into more angry grumbling and the tromp of feet. "Here they come," said Delta. Dark shapes could be seen trudging up the hill toward them, ignoring the cover. But what are they going to do when they get here?" said Zipper. "They look like spears to me." Then she slapped herself. "Oh, yeah." She put her spear down and picked up the bow. After 3 tries, she got it strung and notched an arrow. "Get ready to laugh," she said. Her arrow whipped out into the night, not aimed at any individual goblin, but in the general direction of the dark masses. Yelps and cries went up. "Did I hit something?" asked Zipper, incredulously. Delta peered out over the edge. "You didn't need to." The goblins had scattered from the dense formation to a broader one. Now they were clinging to every piece of cover they could find. "Just stand there silhouetted and make sudden moves now and then." "That works," said Zipper. "I just hope none of them have any bows," added Delta. "I just hope any of them are as bad as me," said Zipper in a good cheer. No archers materialized, and Zipper saved her arrows for more opportune moments. It took them a while, but the goblins did eventually take the hill, and an unruly mob gathered at the base of the windmill. Before long, they started beating on the main door. It crashed and reverberated up and down the windmill. Delta hooked her glaive on some of the support struts, and she used it to anchor herself, while she leaned far out to get a good look directly down. "No one brought an axe," she said. "The door's tough, but it's not going to last forever." They picked up a solid oak bench that they had lugged up to the top. They swung it between themselves and gave it just enough of an arc to clear the edge. It went crashing down below, raising some satisfying howls from the goblins underneath. They stopped for a while, until they were sure there wasn't anything else coming down. Then they started up again. After a couple more pieces of furniture, they put a spotter out to watch and give a cry when the next piece came. Zipper looked at the sack of flour and scratched her chin. "I have an idea." She picked up a torch they had in reserve and handed it to Delta. "We're not worried about archers, right? Light that and hold it for me." Zipper moved the sack of flour to just above the door and gently scorched the side of it, not quite slitting the coarse fabric. She nudged the bag over the edge and leaned out to watch it fall. There was a warning cry from below, and then lots of shouts of alarm as the bag hit, and a huge cloud of flour dust went up. She grinned and motioned for the torch. Leaning out again, Zipper dropped it and then dove for cover. There was a whoomph and a flash of light as Delta watched a gout of flame shine from over the edge. Laughing hysterically, Zipper pulled herself to the edge to look over. Screaming goblins were running all ways, flapping around, crashing into things and each other. Delta looked at Zipper in alarm. "Did you serve with the gnomes?" Zipper laughed even more, then wiped tears from her eyes. "Let's just say country life can get really, really boring. You'd be surprised what you get up to for amusement." Delta looked over the edge again. "No fires. I'm not sure there are any bodies." Zipper shrugged. "The light probably upset them more than the fire. They'll work out no one was hurt in a bit, I'm sure. But it might put the fear of the Hearth Mother into them." The goblins did calm down in the end, but it took them over an hour to work up the nerve to approach the windmill. And when they did, they had a few captains about to make sure none of them congregated too closely in one spot. "I think they're going for the first floor door," said Delta, after leaning out a bit. "They're forming a sort of pyramid to scale the side." She looked about. "We should drop what we have and get down there. We still have several hours before the first light. Here's to luck."